Happy Saturday, folks. Today on the podcast, we have Brom, right? So, by his own admission, he's a prolific ship poster on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. But, he also runs the Birmingham Bitcoin group. And normally we talk a lot of things Bitcoin, but today I guess we're going to pick Brom's brain on the fiat world. We're going to talk a bit about governments, we're going to talk about pensions, fiat world, communism, socialism, but really how Bitcoin really fixes most of those things. So, Bibram, I'm just going to cut to the chase, right? Why do governments print money?
Because they're incentivized to spend more and more, and that's the easiest way for them to pay for it, I would guess.
Yeah.
Because if they actually, it's a bit like if the US and UK taxpayer was paying every month for Afghan war payment, like an extra little tax on the end of your thing,
like a
it
subscription
wouldn't have
model.
lasted.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have lasted 20 years.
No,
So
it
we
wouldn't have.
have.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, is it it's just the easiest thing to do, I guess, right? Having access to the money printer, just printing away whatever the hell you want and not really being given accountable for it.
Yeah, there's no. Yeah. Who's the guy? There's a guy that Brokenomics. I don't know if you've come
Mm,
across this guy that
mm,
he talks about that, but he sort of lays out here's the way you can fund yourself as a government. They're going to take the easy way. That's the easy way, and it, and
yeah.
it's and it's hidden and pernicious and people don't really notice it year by year. And then suddenly, a
Mm,
couple of years ago, when inflation went completely ballistic, people suddenly became aware of it. You know,
yeah.
when you go into Tesco and a bottle of olive oil is £6, people are like, "What the what?"
Yeah.
But for years they can just little 2%, 3. Well, it's more than that, isn't it? Probably seven
Yeah.
percent,
Yeah.
a year by year by year. But your wages are going up at the same time, so you sort of think you're getting richer,
Mm,
but you can't buy as many things. But you don't really know that. It's like, oh, my dad was only on £12,000 and I'm on £35,000.
mm,
I'm doing far better than him because we have deliberately the pound or whatever fiat currency is a fixed unit in our heads. It's a fixed unit rather than
yeah.
saying, well, that was £12,000 in 1984. That's actually worth
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
hundred
Yeah.
thousand pounds or something.
Yeah. But how many people do you think, like how many, of what percentage of the population even realizes that money can simply be conjured up in an Excel sheet by this cabal of unelected officials? Like,
Most don't,
who gets it?
because I like speaking. I like asking people and try to. And there's a divide with the sexes. I think
Mm,
women often haven't really thought about it. It's just money.
mm.
Men often think it's backed by gold. That's been my
Even
experience.
now?
A lot of people, yeah, a lot of normies,
Wow.
not
Wow.
people that come along to the Bitcoin group. They've
No, no, of course not.
already
No.
started doing the work.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I always laugh uh, that we end up with very similar viewpoints on a whole wide range of things in the world and philosophy and history and all sorts of things. Because when you start with the same fundamental sort of axioms, you end up coming to the same conclusions about things. It's really
Mm,
quite funny. You can, when I've met quite a lot of um, people from around the UK Bitcoin scene, and you can just sit down and you'll be best friends within
yeah.
5 minutes, and you'll be fitting in with a conversation wherever you go because we have the same viewpoint because it's been molded by the Bitcoin philosophy. It's funny.
It's no, I completely agree. I mean, yeah, I've seen that a lot. Like, so I'm in London, I've done a couple of Bitcoin meetups, and it's like, it's so refreshing compared to the normie conversations I have, right? Like, there's no bloody small talk about the weather or the football. It's literally, right, do you reckon inflation is actually 7%? And then we just straight into it.
I can't really do normally talk. It bores me. I just turn off. I saw
Yeah,
you had interviewed Ashley Giles
yeah,
and Sai as well from Bridge to Bitcoin. Very good. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, they're brilliant guys, brilliant guys. And I love the way they are sort of, out there spreading margin adoption, right? It's like we're literally building up this parallel sort of economy just from grassroots, right? Like everyone there gets monetary policy. They understand the time value of money. It's like a different school of thought completely, and it's all available now today. If I wanted a burger, I know where to go in London, where I can use my Bitcoin as money, get my burger, and be completely detached from this frankly ridiculous fiat system, right? It's really
Yeah.
strange to me it's taken so long for it to happen. If you look at what's happening in America, it's an election point. Trump's talking about it. Kamala's probably being told to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like why are Brits are we shy about talking about this? Do we not even think it's a talking point? I mean, inflation's hitting us as bad as the Americans, but we don't seem to get Bitcoin.
The UK is in a bad way. As we were talking before we
Yeah,
before you pressed record, and I was saying about I'm interested in the how Bitcoin fixes this, but like economics and philosophy and history and things like that. And I think the Brits still have a completely delusional view of how wealthy they are, and
mm,
and how and the UK's position in the world. There's such a jarring difference. Uh, and then you go somewhere. I don't know. I was in Hong Kong a few years ago. You go to Hong Kong
yeah,
and you're like, "Holy Moses, I'm living in the future."
yeah,
Compared to, you know, you go
yeah,
back to the UK and where we've got dying high streets. Even in the quite sort of affluent areas,
yeah,
you can see everything sort of threadbare and hanging on. And £35,000 is like, oh, that's a good salary. And you're like, are you? And the Americans are on Twitter teasing
yeah,
us, going, like, did you see that the job advert for the head of cybersecurity for the whole of the UK government,
yeah,
and it was less than a new grad computer science graduate in America. It's like
yeah.
it's so broken. The whole thing is, but they don't seem to have realized it yet. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but like, is that incompetence or is that just like arrogance? What is it? I don't get it. I mean, how can you not appreciate reality? Like, how deluded must you be to not see that this is actually
Because
the
reality
way
is
it is?
what you're being told in the media, perhaps. I don't
Mm,
know. I It's like the fish, the old thing about the fish swimming along, and another fish comes up to them and says, "How's the water today, guys?" And they're like, "What's
mm,
water?" It's kind of
mm,
like that. If that's just your reality, what you're surrounded by.
mm,
You don't really, you're not seeing it from a bigger thing. I think it's only if you're traveling internationally or you're connected some other way with other people that you've got
mm,
little data points. You go, "Oh, actually, this doesn't make sense." You know,
mm,
you see
mm,
the graph of the sort of GDP per person in the UK since the GFC. It's flat.
mm,
Like
mm,
that's
mm,
that should be being talked about long form on every pod. It should be on the news. There should be people discussing how serious it's completely. They're not discussing it deliberately. They're not mentioning it.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, and I think it's really pernicious, isn't it? Because it's like it's almost like, I mean, like, again, look, the Bitcoiners love the matrix and take the orange pill sort of thing, right? And look, you can, but I think it takes you a lot of learning, a lot of self introspection to get to that stage, even as an individual, to go, oh right, that's what the bloody Bitcoiners are on about. You know what I mean? Like, it's you got to
Or or
consciously
or,
make that.
or pain.
Mm,
Enough pain might be able to get you there as well. You know what I mean?
yeah,
If you've been battered by the world, it's like
yeah,
this isn't right. Like
that's a good point, actually. Yeah, yeah.
I grew up in Northern Ireland
Mm,
during the Troubles, and I came to England in the 1990s, sort of mid 1990s, and my my parents' um, um, lifestyle. What would you call it? Like maybe lower middle class. Wasn't they weren't
yeah.
wealthy or anything, but lower middle class. Uh, but it was a higher level. We had a boat, like a yacht in the sailing ship. My dad used to water ski and windsurf, and and just the lifestyle they had in the middle of the troubles in Northern
Mm,
Ireland.
that's mad.
And it's like, and now I'm on a much higher amount of salary than well, I'm self-employed, but
Yeah,
income than my dad would have been, even allowing for inflation. And and it's like I can't do those things, or
no,
it's so our world has been so contracted. I
yeah.
think I would like a yacht or a boat, And you look at these old boats that were maybe they were built in the 1950s or 60s, these wooden boats. I like the old ones.
Yeah.
And nowadays the labor cost would be like 200,000 or 300,000. It'd be completely ridiculous. Whereas that was this is just a normal
Yeah.
boat for a normal family that want to get on the water. It wasn't some sort of luxury,
Yeah.
James
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's something's gone very, very wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe the Bitcoiners are just the first people, like the canaries in the coal mine, to go, something's not right here,
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, exactly. And but I mean, one of the pushbacks to that, and I've made that argument when it comes to housing, right? Because I remember, living in London back in schooling. Because I did a lot of my college in Dublin actually,
Oh yeah.
but before that I was in school in West London. And today, when I go back to those areas, it's like nothing is absolute, like everything is like degraded to like, I mean, the way I remember it 25 years ago. It's actually gotten worse, like demonstrably worse.
And West London would is an affluent area. That's kind of what I'm saying. I think of the pockets of affluence in the UK. They're like sort of fingers through, I don't
Yeah,
know, a membrane, and they're the last. So everything else is in
it's much
economic
worse.
condition. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
And the affluent areas, they've still got a bit of nice. You can still go to a nice cafe. You can still go to the French bakery
yeah,
and have a proper bread or whatever.
yeah,
But even there, you can see it fraying. Even there, it's becoming
yeah.
impossible for people to ignore. And I remember as a school kid, I'd be like walking home from school, and I would see like teacher's house, and it would be like four
Oh, I think I
bedroom
lost you there.
or 3 or 4 bedroom detached with a garage and some and gardens around it. That was a teacher's house or a head teacher, head of department or something, but not.
Yeah.
And now, whatever many years later, completely unaffordable. That same teacher doing that same role, they're probably sharing a house. They're probably
Mm,
renting and sharing a house. It's like
yeah.
something has gone really, really wrong.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre to me. And like it's I think who was I speaking with? Ashley Giles actually was saying one of his relatives, his nephew, who has now moved over to London, starting a new job, pays roughly about three-quarters of his take-home income in rental costs to live in the center of London in while sharing with other people. And this
It
guy's
kills.
is decent. Like
It's
he's,
a
he's
good
on a
way to
decent
live.
wage.
It kills everything. That's like going back to that yachting thing. I bet you if you looked at the data for everything, for like I don't know, cricket clubs
Yeah.
or but certainly like sailing club, or it's just not even, you're not even capable of doing it. But even things like
Mm.
DIY stuff or gardening stuff. Well, you don't have a garden anymore. You don't have any space to do DIY. You don't have any. There's doing, I don't know, woodworking hobby where you would
Mm.
do woodwork in your garage. Well, you don't have a garage anymore.
Mm.
All of, or model trains. Or I'm just trying to think of different people's hobbies.
Yeah.
But all of that must just be collapsing because there's
Yeah.
nobody can afford it anymore. It's
Yeah,
it's
and I think there's two angles to this as well, right? So one of the angles, I don't know if you're familiar with Jeff Booth and his work.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he talks about abundance in money is scarcity everywhere, and vice versa, right? So, and I think this whole concept of, like, he was talking about how Sears, which is an American kind of supermarket, in the 70s, you could order a pre-made, fully built
House.
house to
Yes,
your
yes.
to your land for 2,500 quid
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah,
70s,
yeah, yeah.
50,
And
close
it
to
should
60
be,
years
and
ago.
people argue against this, and I'm saying, but I agree with Jeff Booth. I was talking about the books that have influenced me, like Alan Farrington and The
Yeah,
Sovereign Individual, and
yeah,
these ones. I should have mentioned Jeff Booth as well. I think he's brilliant.
yeah,
But it's completely right. It's like, but people are arguing. Even Bitcoiners have argued with me against this, and I'm saying, but it should be like a house shouldn't be, and a man's there putting bricks on it. It should be pre-built, super high-end glass, like amazing U-value glass walls,
mm, yeah.
open plan, and instead we've got these pastiche, weirdly
Plasterboard.
proportioned, weirdly proportioned red brick houses with tiny windows, or tiny
Yeah,
plastic windows. It's like it's how can
yeah,
nobody else see? I go through my day, my poor long suffering partner has to listen to me ranting about these things, but
yeah,
it's serious because it's it's stunting lives. It's stunting millions of people's lives just in the UK. Never mind.
Yeah, and I think the other exactly. So that's one thing, right? So technology is inherently deflationary, as
Yeah.
Jeff puts it, and that's probably that's one angle. But the other angle is, like you mentioned, about the pain that people face. You see, like you are facing the pain, I'm facing the pain by all this stuff, right? But what the government does is actually sort of numbs that pain by printing the cash. So in other words, pain relief is given to you as a higher number go up salary, right? So, like you said, when you compare your dad's wages to yourself, you're actually numbing your pain to a slight extent. I mean, as a Bitcoiner, probably know you've seen through that bullshit. But a lot of people are going, right, okay, brilliant, right? So I'm actually making 3 times as much as I should, even accounting for inflation. And this is the life I have. But maybe
Yeah,
this
you're
is
right.
the life I have,
I think that's a really good point. But it's like a little. It's a bit like the Matrix again, where there's just a niggle in your brain where you know this isn't right. Where it's
Yeah,
like, well, I should be able to take my family on holiday or do whatever, and
yeah,
it's like, how have I? Why am I in my overdraft? You know.
yeah,
But yet I'm getting paid, so and everybody's telling me I'm doing really well, and
yeah.
yeah, it's like a little niggle in your brain where you go, there's something. But they are forcing that, I think. But their fiat behavior is forcing the tension between reality and your perception of reality to be bigger and bigger and bigger, and that causes
Mm,
pain. And eventually, people, hopefully,
snap.
well, they have to snap. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think people start. I mean, before they even snap, they're going to start voting with their money, right? At the end of the day, or they're voting with their choices. For example, they're going to start thinking that, hey, hang on a minute, why is the world telling me buying a shitty apartment on a seventh floor with £7,000 a year of management fees is a good idea? Like, who the hell said that that is what I'm supposed to
it
do?
only
Somebody's
works.
gonna,
It only works when the prices are going up year by year by year. As soon as you have prices going down and you've got that ever increasing management fee on top, that is just
it's a recipe for disaster.
yeah, yeah.
I know so many young people who talk to me about, I have 20 grand saved up. I'm going to put down a 5% deposit on this apartment and it's in London. Prices don't go down in London. Worst case, I can rent it out and make the money that way. And I'm like, you're not factoring in opportunity costs. You're making this solid assumption that house prices, whatever the size of the locality of the house or the quality of the house, is simply going to keep going up. It's not the house price going up. The utility value of the house is essentially the same. All that's happening is your measurement scale is being exploited and basically being being ripped to shreds. So
Yeah.
the
I think
denominator is the
opportunity
problem.
cost is a really hard concept for a lot of people. Don't really get it.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't teach it in schools for a reason, I guess.
Yeah, but I used to live in south of the river in London,
Yeah.
and I used to get off at Brixton station, and you walk around there, and now it's gentrifying again, and it's
Mm,
all it's still a bit dodgy, but it's
yeah.
gentrifying. But you walk around, and it's all mansions,
Yeah.
and then for I don't know, 50 years, 60 years, that all declined and it ended up a rough area and they were divided into apartments and all the rest of it. And now we're coming out the other side. So those people that bought those mansions originally, they must have been in negative equity and I don't know when it would have been
Yeah.
between 1920 and 1970 or 80 or
Mm, No, exactly, exactly. And I think it's this. Again, I'm not a big fan of Warren Buffett anymore, to be honest with you. But he talks about the rising tide, raises all boats sort of thing. And I think
uh,
there's like such like I think people grossly underestimate the value of not the value, but like the factor which inflation plays in their portfolio gains. You know what I mean? Like if there was no inflation, would you actually have made any money? If you
it's
measure the S&P and the Bitcoin standard, it's
it's
going
shocking.
down.
It's shocking like the you cannot deny the close relationship between those two things. But the cynic, so you could go, oh my god, it's all pointless. What have I been chasing the things for? Or the other side is, holy shit, I need to be holding assets to preserve wealth. That's the
Yeah,
that's the other side of it. It's like, are they going to print even more? Yeah. Well then, forgetting Bitcoin, you should own the S&P. It's
yeah,
massively overvalued. historically, yeah, I know, but it's probably going to go up because they're
Yeah.
printing.
Yeah, so I think okay, yeah, that brings us to the next topic, right? Which I think is really linked to the life cycle of this money printing sort of agenda that we seem to have globally, by the way. This isn't specific to the UK. This happens everywhere. It's like they print more of the money. That money makes its way, at least in paper or in theory, to the assets that you're talking about, like housing, like commercial real estate, like the share market, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Everything goes up. But then when you want to exit your position,
The
you're hit with the
tax
capital gains
gains.
tax.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, what the hell was the point of that?
Yeah. I've been talking about this recently. It's only sort of been percolating into my brain recently, where it's like, oh my goodness, this is what they're doing. So I think we've had very high asset inflation over the last several decades, and the people that were already wealthy and had the assets have made out like bandits. It seems like as the people's consciousness are realizing, oh, they're printing here. I need to own assets. That the as you
Mm.
say the state is trying to close the door on that and say, even hold your asset, and we're still gonna take all your wealth.
Unrealized capital gains in the US. That's an actual election topic. I can't
It was
even wrap my head
Warren,
around it.
Elizabeth Warren, I think, was the one that was promoting that. Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's kind of what we were talking about before this. I was recommending Alan Farrington's Bitcoin is Venice book, um, but he's talking about what proper capitalism is, what what we're currently experiencing, and he was describing it as the difference between farming, like capitalism is farming and gradually increasing the fertility of your soil over generations, and
yeah.
so your output of your farm would gradually go up, and you'd be spending money in improving the breeds of cattle, or the quality of the seeds. That's what we should be doing, and what they're actually doing is strip mining. So
Mm,
they're just dragging it away, and this is like an acceleration of that strip mining with the taxing or increasing the tax on capital gains,
mm.
which just hastens the end, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as even as a pleb, for example, sorry, not even a Bitcoin pleb, just a pleb of the fiat system, right, which is probably the worst place to be in. But there are a lot of people in that position. Um, why are they even incentivized to buy anything and hold it over the long term if you're gonna end up taking all the risk and the government gets effectively half the reward, what the hell would you why would you bother?
Because the UK is already so poor, what percentage of the population are doing that? Are even able to
Mm,
do that?
mm,
Not
mm,
not very much.
right.
So it becomes an election thing. It's like Argentina. It's like a Argentina light, isn't it? It's vote for us and we'll enact socialist policies and and impoverish the few remaining entrepreneurs even more. So
Mm,
again, it's strip mining because it's a temporary solution that leads to long term impoverishment and barren
yeah.
soils.
So I mean, the UK has seen a lot of shift between. I remember back in Tony Blair days, right? So Labour is going strong, and all that kind of stuff was building. Lasted a couple of terms, I think. Then the Conservatives came in, stayed in power for about 15 odd years, done the whole Brexit thing, got absolutely gazumped in the last thing. So it's again swinging back left. And these guys are going to print more money, and they're going to tax you more. Um, what like is this just a cyclical thing between two different streams? And like for the normal guy on the street, his life just gets miserable, irrespective of who the hell is in power anyway. I mean, we're the libertarians in
I
this
have a
one.
much more cynical view of that. It was just a continuation. It's been a continuation since before Blair, I think. Who was the one before Blair? Major. It's
John
basically
Major, yeah.
it's the same
Yeah.
policies. Whatever puppet, whatever teams in power. It's just the same continuation. There's no. It's not like, oh my goodness, those ones are capitalists and those ones are socialists. No, they're both socialists.
Yeah.
One of them just says things like to appeal to
Businesses or
traditional
whatever. Yeah.
traditional voters that way, and the other one says that, and then they just carry on with the globalist agenda.
Yeah, so where does that leave you as a? I mean, I personally, I think democracy is a facet, the way it's been done. I'd refrain from voting wherever possible, because I don't think it actually. I don't want to endorse this personally in any way. I don't give a shit, right? Bitcoin is my single issue, and that solves everything for me. I'm happy with that. But are a lot of people more cynical about the political system? Do they actually believe in these sort of mini camps that they have? Do you think there's a left and right debate going on? Or are people actually seeing this for what it is, which is basically a continuation of the same old agenda?
I think it's a minority of us that see it. I think COVID seemed to wake a lot of people up.
Mm,
The people that joined my Bitcoin meetup group, that's quite a common theme where they were normies until, oh, something's seriously going wrong here. Whether it was being lied to from the about the vaccines or the dangers, or witnessing the explosion and the giving out money left, right, and center, or whatever, and everything going up in price, whatever it was. But that seemed to be a catalyst for quite a lot of people.
mm,
But the majority are still sleeping. I can use my mother as a good gauge on what's
mm.
what's going on, because
What the normies? Yeah,
she'll just repeat what's. But she has Bitcoin, but that will just she'll just repeat what they've been told on the.
yeah. So how does? I mean, look, I know I have an opinion on how Bitcoin fixes it, but how do you think Bitcoin actually fixes this problem?
I come from a pleb level, let's say, where I'm not even thinking systemically or anything like that. I'm talking about from an individual level.
Mm,
At least this is a way of preserving your labor,
mm,
and you can step away from the UK if it gets too awful. You can walk out with some words in your head and take all your wealth with you.
yeah,
That's I think that's a very powerful thing. Um, there was a so yeah, Warren Buffett. I still like Warren Buffett. But I know why you're saying that.
I think it
It
was a
was,
rat poison comment. Oh, that might have been manga. That might have been manga. I can't
I
remember.
think that was my. Um, but I was rereading The Intelligent Investor a few months ago,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work anymore in a fiat. It only makes sense in a hard money world. It doesn't. The advice is irrelevant in a fiat system. It was like,
Mm.
oh wow, and it's a bit. There was this old book written in the 30s, maybe, or 40s, and it's called The Richest Man in Babylon. I don't know if you've
Yeah, I
come
read
across
it. Yeah,
it.
brilliant.
I really
Brilliant.
like it. But it's really, really simple and basic. And the idea is that these growing your wealth or becoming financially independent should be universal things, that the same rules apply whether it was 5,000 years ago or today. It shouldn't make any difference wherever you are. These
Yeah.
are the principles. Again, it doesn't work in a fiat world. They've
No.
completely broken it. But it's kind of like, so the the idea in that is very straightforward stuff. It's basically like, spend less than you earn and
Mm.
start putting a little bit of what you earn into your savings account. That's the very beginning of
Yeah.
growing your wealth. You can't do that in a fiat system. Bitcoin allows that to begin again.
Mm. Mm.
It's yeah.
And for me, I remember one of the takeaways I had from it. Like, I mean, it's a really nifty book for anyone who's not read it. I mean, you could go through it in about a couple of hours. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's really nice. I don't know how factual it is, some of the stories, but either way, it's a good narrative. You'll digest the information very well. And to your point about the concept of, hey, look, saving 10% of your take home income, for example, only works on a hard money standard. And the reason for that, for anyone who is not aware, is because you can't debase hard money, right? So when you own 10% of something, that thing remains with you through effectively posterity. Now, yes, you can argue about gold, but gold kind of has diminishing properties compared to Bitcoin as money. That's a whole separate conversation. We're not going to go there. But what it's done for me is it's actually made my life more abundant, because now what I do is I set aside some Bitcoin at the start of every month, and go, that's my saving and that's going to remain. And everything else outside of that, I don't give a shit. I just make sure that I have the best possible luxurious life for me and my family as I can, because I'm not too worried about chasing ridiculously high gains and taking ridiculously high risk, because what's the point? Like, it's all fiat anyway. So might as well get some Bitcoin that can be debased and then use everything else to improve the quality of my life.
I think that's a great. Yeah, I think that's great. So that's the position I'm coming from, like from the individual, which is so it's been a little frustrating. Like I've been running the meetup group, so it's third Thursday of every month in Birmingham Centre. So the next one is next week in the
Nice.
Wellington. If anybody's around, everybody's welcome. I always say everybody welcome, no shitcoiners. I'm only joking. I'm only joking about that. They can come and
No,
we'll
no.
just tease
You need to have a strict no shit kind of policy for sure.
we'll tease it out of them eventually. Uh, but it's so there used to be a group in Birmingham and it never really grew, and they were marketing on meetup.com.
Yeah.
And then it struck me, and it died. And then it struck me as Bitcoiners meet up on Twitter, or that's how we communicate. So I'm gonna market on Twitter. But it turns out, even though we're living through the collapse of fiat and we're in an economic, I keep saying Birmingham especially, we're living in an economic depression. I keep wanting to be one of those guys that has the phone and walks around the streets going, look at the state of this. Like this is
Yeah.
not good. Even there's not very many people like searching in Twitter Bitcoin Birmingham or some combination of keywords. I do it every now and then, and it's just me that comes up. Other or scammers trying to get you on a trading course or something like that. But there's not really an organic, like they're not out there searching. The normies aren't even searching for it yet. The UK really seem, apart from parts of London, the UK really seems to be in a backwater as far as this goes. I don't know.
I think it's by design, mate. I genuinely think it's by design.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah. I think because it's like distract the masses, right? I mean, just keep them busy in fucking day-to-day bullshit so that they never worry about the state of their own demise, right? It's kind of like,
Bread and circuses.
yeah,
Did
yeah.
you,
It's not,
are you aware of that? That it was a Roman, sort of the decline of the Roman Empire was,
yeah.
they were doing that, but they actually invented the company, the limited company was invented by the Romans.
Oh wow, I
You
didn't
know
know
that?
that.
Isn't that amazing?
No.
Yeah. But uh, yeah, quite incredible. But the bread bit was
Yeah,
they were basically doling out the dole, and the
yeah,
unemployment
yeah,
benefit.
yeah.
They were doling out whatever amounts of flour per day per citizen, and this gradually went up over time, and they were taxing people more and more and more to pay for this. It was
Mm,
like a benefit culture, and it
mm,
crept up and crept up, and the taxes got so uh, high that the farmers that were living in the countryside supplying all this, they were getting taxed so much. It became a thing. They just dropped the tools. They just left. They just walked off their farm
yeah.
and disappeared, and like maybe went to Gaul or somewhere away from the
I'm
center of Rome, and set up and just went back to subsistence farming and just abandoned it. But it's
yeah,
like we're literally it's literally the same thing happening
yeah, yeah,
again.
yeah. No, I agree, and I think that also this whole I was reading this article. Or it might have been a book actually, SPQR. I don't know if you remember it, but it's all about the Roman Empire
Oh,
and
Colin.
yeah, exactly, and
Yeah.
the eventual demise of it, and it's so intricately linked to the inflationary policies of the of the Caesar and then the emperor
Oh, is
towards
that
the end.
they even cover that in that book? Do they?
They do, yeah, yeah. I mean, they don't. She doesn't harp on about it as much as, let's say, somebody like, if
Oh, is
you
this
read
Mary Beard? Is this Mary
Mary
Beard?
Mary Beard, yeah, sorry, yes, Mary Beard.
I haven't read that.
She doesn't talk about it as explicitly. It's more sort of, hey, look, the socioeconomic life within Rome was this certain way, and she just leaves it at that. And I think a lot of fiat economists or historians don't bridge that gap towards
Maybe
the
it feels
end.
uncomfortable. It's like, oh, I'm not going here. Something it doesn't
But
feel
that's what I
comfortable.
mean about the control part of it, because I'll tell you now. I mean, I have a full time job, which I'm obviously thankful to have. A lot of my revenue comes from there. If I was to say something that's doesn't go down too well with my management, it has repercussions across my life, right? So, in other words, I'm sort of, I, I mean, look, yes, I am a Bitcoin. I can be open about that. But then if I start telling my management how they can improve their revenue, their balance sheet just by incorporating a harder money system, I'll be
Yeah.
laughed out of the bloody building because all these Stanford MBAs in the room are going to turn around and go, well, that's a Ponzi scheme. That's bollocks. That's not
Yeah.
what I learned in school, right? And it's like, shit. I mean, to even argue, to even be right, you kind of have to be certified to be right. You got to be. You can't be right by
Yeah, right.
anything else.
And the system won't certify you because to say something that's undermining it. So you're stuck.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
We were talking before this about the pensions, and I was
Yeah.
saying, oh, actually, do you want to ask me rather than me? I feel
No,
as
no,
if
no.
I'm
Go for it. Go for it. Go for it. Go on.
okay.
Tell me your views on pensions because I think that
So
that's an
we were just
interesting topic.
discussing this before we started hit record, and I was saying that I was on the so this is UK centric, but I'm sure it's the same for other places. There's a charity called Age Concern about for getting elderly people grants and benefits and things like this. So they have a calculator on their website where you can go and type in your circumstances, and then they'll tell you what benefits you're entitled to. So I was just playing around with this, and I have a pension, a Fiat pension,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I have some Fiats in ISA investments and things like this as well. Um, so I was just plugging in different scenarios into their calculator, and it was a 72-year-old man. Uh, he owned his own house. He had a pension, a personal pension of about £10,000 a year. So let's say that means 200,000 in a
In a pot.
saved up in a fund, uh, and 20,000 in the bank, and he would be entitled to zero benefits on top of his old age pension of £200 a week. And then I did the same scenario, but this time the guy was renting and had no other personal pension and had no money in the bank, and he would be earning extra benefits that would basically be the same as the first guy's income from his pension.
That's
So, in
mad.
other words, the system's disincentivized us saving for a pension or living or taking a long term view. You know, the whole short term. The rational in that circumstance, which is reality, it would be more rational to be the second guy and to actually have a go on nicer holidays and have a nicer car and just spend the money
Yeah.
and then take the benefits when it comes than be the careful prudent guy that slowly saves his
Yeah.
money in the background over decades. You're, you're, it's still annoying me. It's still upsetting me that
Yeah.
this has to be designed like this. Who would design such a system?
I
It's
think it's morally bankrupt, right?
yeah, that's why it
It's
annoys me. It's because it's immoral. That's why it annoys me.
yeah. And I think for me it's like you are actually abusing. Well, because it is abuse. I mean, you're financially
It
abusing
is. It is.
the hardest
Yes.
workers in
Yes.
a society and you're
Yes.
penalizing them for daring to go and fulfill their life's potential. That's
Yes.
actually what you're doing. And it's like, but that's monetary policy. And it's like, how the hell? Like, why
Well,
are
and that
people
brings
not
us
up in
on to the
arms?
capital. But that brings
Yeah.
us on to the capital gains, as you were talking about, putting the capital gains up. That's another attack on. Well, why would I risk everything? You know, the chances of, let's say we set up a company
Yeah.
and 5 years later we're able to sell it for £10 million or something like that,
Yeah.
and then you get this big massive capital gains tax. The chance of that succeeding would be very small. I don't know what the percentage would be, but it'd be very small, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
2% or 3% or whatever
Yeah.
it would be. All those other scenarios would have been us starting that and ending up going bankrupt or
Yeah.
getting into debt or it
Yeah.
failing in some other way.
97 times out of 100, we're
97
going to
times out
end
of
up in
100,
the ditch. Yeah.
we wouldn't have sold it for 10 million. So even when you succeed, they they clip your wings or they smack it. It's like they're incentivizing mediocrity
It's yeah,
and
it's pure rent seeking behavior. Pure rent
yeah.
seeking behavior, to be honest. That's
Back
that's
to
all
the
it
Alan
is.
Farrington thing about it's strip mining. It's like you're not gonna. You look at the number of innovative companies that have come out of Europe and the UK in the last 20 years. Nothing. Zero.
Yeah.
That is damning. Absolutely damning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the Americans are a little bit still ahead in that regard, but I actually put that down to, believe it or not, the fact that a lot of them own guns.
Yeah,
I think it is a fear of violence because
I
in
wouldn't
Europe,
disagree.
yeah, in Europe and even most of Asia, right? Because my parents are Indian and they go through this and they're retired, and it's like, I mean, they're not living their best life when in fact they've done absolutely everything right that they should have. By the book, they've played the book. It
Yeah,
just so happens that the guys have messed the book. They literally
yeah,
changed the book. So what do you do, you know? And what are
yeah.
you left with? What's your only recourse of action? Nothing. You rely on benefits if you want. You rely on the charitable nature of others, even after you've spent a lifetime grinding at the Fiat mining machine.
Yeah, yeah. What's the yeah? And if you're, let's say, you're 20 years old now, what would you advise somebody to do? Well, I would say, like, my partner's daughter has just gone off to uni. She's going to do law, and she's gone into a very good uni. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe that makes economic sense. But for most of them going to uni, it's not going to make
No.
sense to do that. So what do you do? Do you stay in your hometown with the low wages and the extremely high um, cost of living and the crumbling, awful infrastructure and the closing shops and pubs? What do you do? It's a terrible outcome. I would say you want a skill that you can take with you, use online, and then get the hell out.
Yeah.
That seems the
Yeah.
only rational.
But and then this is why Def Booth, I think, is a bit, what he says is quite prophetic, because actually the job that you and I are doing, let's say currently, and bringing actual value to the marketplace and being rewarded for that value, is actually diminishing because of technology, right? So you're going to have, I don't know if your job is can be done by AI, but assuming on a long enough time horizon, everyone's job is going to be done by AI
Yeah,
uh, for nickels on the dime, right? So they're going to do it at literally a cent on the pound or whatever it
yeah,
is, and it's going to be like, um, all of that sort of gap between productivity and the actual money you get at the end of the day is just only going to get larger and larger and larger. So what do they do to make that up? They're going to have to prop up that entire section of society, which is going to be a majority of society, on fiat money. That's
it's
the only solution.
It's Lynn Alden's tweet. I don't know if you know it, but
Yeah, I do.
every now and then she just goes, "Nothing stops this train." So it's basically they're going to print. There's no other. It's the same as the Brokenomics guy.
Yeah,
It's the only conclusion you can come to. They're going to print. So what do you want to do? You probably want to hold Bitcoin. Like this,
yeah.
that seems a
See, and then again, from a purely selfish perspective, I would actually like them to print more, because that's going to prop up my Bitcoin more, at least in fiat terms. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So print rises Bitcoin as well, as much as it rises absolutely anything else. It's just that Bitcoin is going to rise a shitload faster and stay
yeah,
a lot higher because they're not going to be more of them. You can make more houses, you can generate more stocks, you can,
yeah,
you can buy more bonds,
yeah.
make more Bitcoin. Then you can't. So yeah, the scarcity argument, I think, wins out from a store of value perspective for Bitcoin, right? But okay, anyway, coming back to normie land, normies are now faced with, like you're saying. I mean, for the ones that are slowly waking up, they're seeing it, but then they get trapped into the, oh my god, why don't I buy Ethereum? That mindset. How the hell do you break that? How do you communicate that? How do people understand that? They got to feel the pain,
Yeah.
or are they just looking for a quick buck? What I mean,
I think they have to feel the pain. So we were talking earlier about we're not going to go the whole, oh, how did you get into Bitcoin, because it's a
yeah, yeah,
boring
yeah, yeah,
story. Everybody's boring. But when I was getting into it, I was pre. It was a few years ago, and it was pre the Bitcoin standard or anything like that. So I think we had a sort of harder time of you went off. Well, many people went off and did the shitcoin thing, got burned, came back to Bitcoin, and
yeah,
realized, oh no, it's this. Whereas the people that are coming to my meetup now, it's a different generation where they're coming and they're reading Safety in a Moose, so
yeah.
they're straight into no, it's only Bitcoin. So I
That's
think
good.
that has changed. I think the mindset has changed because
Yeah.
there's resources out there that can accelerate your realization that
Yeah.
no, this is the only game in town. That the
Yeah.
rest is the
Yeah.
rest is
No, exactly. I think they have more resources, but I think it's like I find that human ingenuity is inversely proportional to the resources available. It's like weird because the fiat system makes you kind of because it's a psyop, is what it is, right? It's actually it incentivizes you to appreciate your earnings by taking more risk simply because that's the best thing to do, right? As opposed to playing the long game because your time horizons are shortened so much. You want to buy the next shitcoin which can 100x by next weekend rather than seeing a 10% growth on your Bitcoin portfolio forever.
there was I can't remember where I heard this, but it was a really I thought it was a profound thing where they were basically saying, oh, I think it was a book I was reading, where they were basically saying the this generation coming through, so what it would be, the Zoomers, they are so uh oh, it says trying to reconnect on my computer. I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, it's dying a bit. Hang on. Should be back in a second. I think I can still hear you.
I'll just stop for a second. Oh, you can still hear me, can you? Okay, I'll continue. So, yeah, they were basically saying the Zoomers in particular, or each generation coming along, has got it worse and worse. That they have no hope of ever buying a house or retiring or any of these things. That the only thing worth doing is YOLO. They're only. It's almost the time horizon, as you were saying, has shortened so
Oops.
much that
Looks like we
the
lost our
only thing
guest,
is
unfortunately.
putting it
Right,
all on
so
red, or the
I'm going to give
1,000
him a few minutes to
to
come
1
back.
chance of
Don't mind, I'll
making a
edit
million.
this out.
Saving at 10% a year while, or earning 10% a year on an investment while inflation's going on along at 7%, you're never gonna, and and assets are getting higher and higher and higher. You're never going to own a home. Did you lose me there? Did you lose me there? I can hear you, and now you're typing. Can you hear me? Are we back? Testing, testing, testing. Are you back? Hello, hello, hello. Okay, let me know when you're testing, testing, test. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Am I back? Can you hear me at all? No? Can you not hear me? Okay. How do I speak to you? Add a marker? No. What can I do with this? Oh, it's join.
You're back. Ask from Bitcoin to close all other browser tabs open with Riverside. You might have one more thing
Okay,
open.
how's that? Sorry, I didn't want to get rid of it in case you lost some data, but I suppose that's not an issue. Sorry, yeah,
No.
I don't know whose side that was that broke up. So
Yeah.
where did we get to?
So we got to the point where you talking about Zoomers, and I believe you're going to say something about their attention spans, maybe, and that they're only YOLOing.
No,
We
yes.
stopped there.
What I was going to say was such a stage now where they're never going to be able to afford a house, to start a family, to retire, to basically to live. So the only almost their only rational course is to do 1,000 to 1 YOLO. But it makes it's actually a rational.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
10% a year is not going to cut it. You look at you
Yeah.
look at the Australian housing market. It's even worse than ours. You look at the Australian housing market, and you need $1.5 million or $2 million for a starter home in Sydney. How how would that ever? How the only way you can even attempt to do something is yeah, YOLO.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's just absurd. It's the absurdity of the system that incentivizes the utterly irrational to be your most rational course,
Yeah,
just to get, for example, a roof over your head, which I think is a basic necessity, to be honest. You're not really asking for much, are you?
yeah, exactly.
Madness. So look at, I mean, this is the Western world, by the way, we're talking about, right? So it's not even the sort of the underdeveloped parts of the world. I mean, parts of Africa, parts of Asia, which are not, let's say, I mean, which could have dictators, they could have military sort of occupations, they could have war, they could have famine. I mean, it's almost as if we are. I'm not saying we're not concerned about their problems, but actually, the battles we're fighting at home in our everyday lives seem to be as catastrophic as some of the life changing scenarios that they are going through.
Which makes
So
no
yeah,
logical sense in a where our technological advancement has just been continuing. We know more. We are producing more and more food. It shouldn't have been like this.
No.
Fiat has caused this. It's incredible. Even like somewhere like you can argue about crazy property prices in the UK, and you can say, okay, well,
Mm.
a small island and da 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 da. But when it's happening in places like Canada and Australia, it's like this is this is broken. It's a giant empty country. How can it be? You know?
Yeah, it's staggering to me. It really is. And the worst thing is, so I know people living in Australia and Canada. And guess what they do? They buy houses. They're buying houses. They're taking on 90% LTV or whatever the hell to buy houses because that's the only sort of value they think. And also they're trapped in this hamster wheel of, hey, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. It will always go up, right? And it's like, okay, let's plow our savings into this and
But more and
yeah,
more
see what happens.
people, but then more and more people end up in the. I was going to say the underclass. What's the right word for that? Like
Yeah.
left behind by the system. Like let's say you've done that, you've done everything right, you've got married, the house has gone up in value. Then after 10 years, you get divorced, and
Mm,
the man gets screwed, and the woman
mm,
gets the house and all the rest of it. At that point, the man probably has never an opportunity ever to get back to that position again. So there's
yeah.
the underclass is growing and growing and growing a higher and higher percentage of the population, and that's somebody that's doing it right. Never mind somebody with a I don't know substance abuse or did
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you
didn't do
mean.
well in school and they're on a low wage. Even
Yeah,
the people that have done everything right, just one little thing can
yeah.
you get knocked off, and that's it. You're done. You're not getting back there.
Yeah, because I've had this discussion, a very similar discussion with a lot of let's say like the older generation, right, in the UK and in Ireland. And what they always tell me, and this is the typical boomer generation, right? And they turn around to me and go, "Yeah, but that's because you're buying a coffee. That's because you're not working harder. You need to work harder and do
The
this
old
and do that."
avocado toast.
And I'm like, sadly, and I'm like, I think they're right. Their philosophy is right, but the money that they're applying their philosophy to is wrong. So
Yeah,
again, it goes back to the
they're not
Babylon thing.
100% wrong because younger people are paying $20 for an avocado toast because it's hopeless, because that's a little piece of pleasure and
Pleasure for them.
luxury,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it's hopeless. There's no way they can afford that. There's no point in them
Yeah.
saving,
No, absolutely. It's a most rational
yeah,
approach to it. Yeah.
but
Yeah, I agree.
that
And
at least gives you some sort of little pleasure, knowing that you'll never
yeah,
own a home like your parents is.
exactly. And I think one thing so when they said these things to me, what really sort of struck with me was it's not so much it's the delinking of work, effort, skill, talent to monetary reward. That should be a linked process. Fiat delinks each of those things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's kind of like you put in all the work you can, be the best version of yourself, and you still don't get the reward. That pisses people off. But
yeah,
if there was a direct,
and
yeah,
the rent seekers do. The rent
oh
seekers,
yeah, of course, yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because their assets are going up. You see, I mean, like I don't know, if you're the Lord of Kensington who owns, who has a butler in 2024, do you give a shit about inflation? I mean, it's making you richer, and you're just sitting on your ass doing fuck all. To be honest, you're actually adding no value to society, and yet your assets are going to go through the roof.
yeah, and they will rationally be hiding them offshore.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
goodness, Bitcoin is offshore for everybody.
Yeah, 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 exactly. But then so and cut forward 100 years, right? The world's on a Bitcoin standard, right? And now you and I are let's say, I mean, if you're still around, or maybe our kids are in the top 1% in terms of wealth because that's how much Bitcoin we've left them. Are we simply not reintroducing this fiat mindset then at that stage? How does Bitcoin actually break that?
Bitcoiner friend, and he has turned really really negative on Bitcoin. He used to be a Bitcoiner, and he's so negative. He thinks Bitcoin is it's a threat to the world, and it's going to end up with this new aristocracy, and everybody's going to be their slaves and da, da,
Mm,
da. But it just reintroduces a hard money. That's all it does.
mm,
You can't standard. You're not rent seeking. Like okay, let's let's go back a little bit. Bitcoin won't. Let's say Bitcoin over the next 50 years goes up at a certain percentage every year. Obviously, it's volatile, but over that time, it mathematically can't be 30% for 50 years. Mathematically, that wouldn't be possible. You'd be far more than exists in the world. So, but once it gets to its actual, I don't want to say intrinsic because we don't say that, but its actual value in the world, it would then plateau, and then
Yeah.
it should go up. In I think this is a Jeff Booth argument. It will then go up in line with increases in productivity going forward. So after that, it might go up at 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not like our ancestors will be that all the world's wealth will be accruing to them for all time. That would happen over that adoption phase or discovery phase of Bitcoin before it reaches this plateau. So now they're on the plateau now, and they're extremely wealthy. So they got equivalent of billions of pounds, let's say. They have to then they can't rent seek from that. They can't just hold it. It's not going to go up 20% a year from there. They will now have to start spending it to buy things. That's how.
And I believe if they don't do that, they're going to be forced to spend their Bitcoin to get the services to continue living the lifestyle that they're used to.
That's what I'm saying. They will have to spend it or invest it in productive assets, but they will not be able to just hold Bitcoin and go on the ride. It'll just be like gold that just preserves value, not
grows it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's good. Yeah, and I think, I mean, look, if your ex-Bitcoiner friend who's now a shitcoiner's argument is that Bitcoin creates a new aristocracy, I think it will during the adoption phase, and I think it will during the initial parts of the plateau.
Yeah, I agree.
And look,
I said to him that. I said, I think it will. Yeah. And I think probably the people that end up wealthy are going to be more deserving of it than like the US bankers that get like $150 million bonuses every year at the minute,
Oh yeah, exactly.
Because
Well, it's kind of like Christopher.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like Columbus stumbling upon a country full of natural riches and starting in it, and the Europeans descended on America. And like, I mean, yes, America's a land of opportunity, but back then it was absolute quagmire. It was a swamp, right?
Yeah.
But they put in the effort to build society as they know it, have freedom, enshrine the values of liberty into the place. And now it is what it is. Now, again, it might be on a decline, but the only way out of that decline is to is to actually preserve what the foundation the water was built on, which was hard money, right? So they're gonna have to do that at some day. Every empire has to spend, I think, as much energy in maintaining its empiredom as it did to at least attain it in the first place. And I think even as Bitcoiners, we're gonna hustle to buy the Bitcoin and keep Bitcoin as our life savings, but our kids are gonna have to work hard to maintain that. It's not free money.
Yeah, or you use some of it to buy. Like there's nothing. I don't think there'll be anything wrong with you buy 200 acres of farmland and then you rent the farmland to people that want to farm it, and then you get some income from that, or you own parts of profitable businesses and you get some income from that.
Yeah,
there's no problem with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, but that's the beauty of Bitcoin. You really swap it for what you value in your life. You know, unlike Fiat, which you should always swap given the earliest
That's quickly,
opportunity.
It's just a slower version of the Weimar, where they're literally changing the prices. You order a coffee, and by the time it gets delivered, it's a higher price than when you ordered it. It's just
And then, do you know that's why they used to take? That's why customers in the Weimar Republic prefer to pay for the coffee up front,
That's it.
because at the end of the coffee it will cost way more.
But we're there, just a bit of a slower pace.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I know we were past the hour, so I'm just gonna do a couple more, one more topic, which I think could be interesting, and then we'll cut to the rapid fire. So look, bringing it to the daily life, Birmingham, not, I would say, hardly the last I don't know, whatever. It's on Atlantis, right? Put it that way, right? Nor is London, nor is any other part of the world, I think, and we've kind of touched
I call
upon
it
that.
an anti-city because a city is supposed to be where you come. Well, and probably every city in the UK apart from London is this. A city is supposed to produce more than it consumes. That's
Mm,
that's the obviously it consumes food, but it should produce goods or services more than
yeah,
it consumes. The Birmingham
yeah.
is consuming more than it produces. That's not a city. It's something else.
It's a sink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. No, 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 that's all right. That's all right. No, I was just going to say, so on practical terms, I mean, I know you have a Bitcoin meetup group in Birmingham. It's hopefully growing and it's doing well. But what are some of the kind of events you guys have? What are some of the kinds of things you discuss? How likely is it that it's going to grow into something bigger? What can we do as Bitcoiners globally to help that? Yeah, so basically, let's talk about that for a bit.
I went. I think I've gone 4 years in a row now to a thing. It's called the Bitcoin Beach Retreat, and it's on every July in North Wales. Absolutely spectacular location. The owner of the campsite is a Bitcoiner. The campsite is now closed to non-Bitcoiners. Yeah,
Oh,
they might want to
lovely.
go there, and it has its own beach, and
Yeah,
it's just stunning. But and the first year we went there, or I went there, um, uh, there's a lot of people there from the UK scene that are very technical or doing some amazing things, and so I was sort of saying, well, what can I? You should be doing something for Bitcoin. Well, what can I do? And the answer was, well, you could start a meetup group, and I think that's you don't have to invent the next strike or whatever. It can just be I'm just a little node in the Bitcoin network,
mm,
and that's enough. So that's what
mm,
I've tried. I work my Fiat mining job is very tiring. Uses a lot of my resources. I'm not going to be building anything uh, else to do with Bitcoin or trying to sign merchants up to adopt or building an app or
yeah,
anything like that. I am done when I've finished my Fiat work. I don't have much resources left for
yeah,
energy resources left. So I'm happy just to be a little node in the and that's my part. And it's been amazing to see. So that was a shout out to Bitcoin Beach Retreat. You can find it on Twitter.
nice.
Uh, there's
Okay.
not enough people going to it. I don't understand it. Last year we had 85 people. There should be
Hmm.
hundreds. It should be unbelievable. It's the most amazing experience. It is lovely. You just spend 3 or 4 days talking to Bitcoiners in a relaxed space. You've got days together. It's not like you meet up. You have to rush to a meetup. You're there
Yeah,
for
I'm just
2 hours.
looking them up right now. Yeah, it's unreal, and I'm surprised it's only got 2,000 followers. Holy crap!
No,
Yeah,
no big Bitcoiner guru type has talked about it or promoted it, and I don't understand why.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I'll try and invite them to my podcast. Hopefully, they can.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
great.
it'd be great
The
to.
guy that runs it's a great resource, great Bitcoiner. Um,
Nice one.
so yeah, I'm happy just to be the node and to meet up and slowly grow. We have a really lovely group, and it's a real eclectic group of people as well. And it's slowly growing over time. But then we lose some people. People move away or move countries, or and you can see it happening. One of them's moved to Malta, another one's moved to Portugal. Somebody else has moved. You
Mm,
can see it. Just I think as
I think so.
your
Yeah,
mindset um, changes, and you're like, you know what, I'm stepping away from this fiat
yeah,
nonsense.
yeah. No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Look, I mean, definitely. I mean, do give me a shout out. Maybe the next time you're doing one, I'll drop in. We've just had our first baby boy, so I am a bit sort of homebound at the minute. But I'd love to get myself out there, get meet a few more Bitcoiners, start doing this in person, stuff like that.
Third Thursday of every month.
Thursday of every month.
Third
Third Thursday,
Thursday.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So it's next
Gotcha,
Thursday,
gotcha.
whatever date is that? 17th.
And what do you guys do? You just is it
So
meal based? Is it a pub? Or
so it's a pub, yeah.
what
So next Thursday the 17th. So it's a pub. It's a really nice old, really old pub. Doesn't get too busy. Really central to Birmingham. Doesn't get too busy, and we just sit around and it's organically. I'm not sort of into the okay. We're doing a talk on seed signers this week, or we're doing a. It doesn't really. It's more organic than that, and it just
nice.
flows, and it's just a very nice. But that's how I've wanted it to be, you know. So it's
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Definitely, I'm gonna try and make maybe not next Thursday, but the one after that.
we've had some
For
people
sure.
come up. We had the guys, you know, the Argentinian guys that drive around in their van and they've been all over.
Yes, I've heard of them. Yeah,
So they've
yeah.
been there.
Oh, they were down there.
So
Nice.
that was nice to see. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so the way I normally end these things is to do a quick rapid fire thing, right? So let's put you on the spot
No,
for a bit,
no pressure.
and fire, no pressure at all. You'll be fine. It's 5 questions, so and there's no wrong answers. Um, Question one: describe Bitcoin in one word. What non-zero chance is it that Bitcoin is actually a psyop that's being run by elites?
Probably quite high. That's probably higher than other people.
Yeah, one guy I had from India. He's like he's doing what you do, but on an Indian sort of level. And India is quite the on ramps for Bitcoin are extremely difficult. Like the banks stop you from buying Bitcoin, right? So anyway, he was like 85%.
but he's still a Bitcoiner. The 15%'s worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I just think it's too good to be true, but screw it. Um, how often do you check the Bitcoin price?
Maybe unless I'm following people and they're like, "Oh my God, have you just seen that?"
Uh,
I'll go, "Oh, I have to see what that is." But
yeah.
I'm past caring about that.
Oh, really?
Day.
That's brilliant. Like, yeah, I'm yet to get to that stage.
It's just
Yeah,
time. It's just time. And
yeah,
you see it on Twitter, like people just laugh now. It's like, and the people are in the depths of despair,
yeah,
and the Bitcoiners that have been through a cycle or more than one
yeah.
cycle, they're just shit
It
posting.
couldn't be
Matter,
asked. Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Exactly. Cool. Will there ever be harder money?
here harder money than Bitcoin, but whether it will be adopted, like you could,
Yeah,
like as people have done the thought experiment before, you could do like, okay, it's a new Bitcoin. There's only one coin. Well, you could, and there's no inflation. It's like, well, that technically would be harder, but it's not gonna
yeah,
it's not gonna work. There was a few beautiful things just had to work
yeah.
with Bitcoin. Like at the beginning,
It's like the
it had to be so they were mining a hell of a rate, but at the beginning, like I remember there was faucets. You could go and you could click, and you would get some Bitcoin from the faucet and come back the next day
yeah,
and do it again.
yeah,
Uh, so it had to be worthless at the beginning, and it was just a fun thing to distribute it widely enough.
mm,
There was all these
yeah,
little fine things that just had to work, like a Goldilocks
yeah.
thing. You know, you have to do
Exactly,
that.
exactly the Goldilocks effect. And I think it's impossible for those set of circumstances to happen again. Uh, I don't think personally, I don't think they can. I mean, I think we've pretty much reached as close to perfection as humanity can when it comes to an actual discovery and an invention with Bitcoin. I think it's,
I think I agree with you. Yeah. They
yeah,
call it sort of the immaculate conception, but because we're now aware, it's because when it came, it was worthless or it was worth like 7p or something. Now, and nobody was thinking, oh, maybe Hal Finney was, but nobody else was thinking this could be worth £10 million. This one Bitcoin. But now
yeah,
we're too self-aware, so a new thing comes out, immediately they'll be thinking about that, so it wouldn't work
yeah,
because people will hoard it,
yeah.
so it'll not distribute it. So
Yeah. And I love the way it was distributed because people always come to me saying, yeah, but all the guys who had the information hoarded it, and it's how is that a fair distribution? I'm like, well, okay, well, how would you do it? Because a pre-mine is not a fair distribution, I mean, that's pure fiat.
my shitcoin friend that doesn't like Bitcoin anymore, he says the same thing, and I'm like, but it's perfectly fair distribution. It's like you like now, like let's say you're not mining, you're like right now
Yeah,
you don't have any Bitcoin and you want Bitcoin. You have to exchange your labor for Bitcoin. Yeah, but if that person's rich, they can buy more Bitcoin. Yeah, but that's fair. It's not. It's not. No, you could argue
yeah,
they've stolen money, but it's the fairest distribution you can come up with, and it doesn't give you any more power in the network than
yeah. I think these kind of arguments is just it's just straw man, right? I mean, it's kind of like, right, let's chuck this turd on the wall and hope it sticks against Bitcoin
it's
because
kind
it's
of
kind of gotten to the
well,
yeah,
it's kind of fiat thinking as well. It's kind of centralized how to make some perfect system thinking rather than going, this is working in the real world and it's as fair as we can get it, because you could go, okay, we're going to do a new Sitcoin, and everybody in the UK gets 10,000 of them. And let's say it wouldn't succeed, but let's say it succeeds and becomes worth something. During the process of that becoming worth something, people would have been accumulating and buying them cheap from
Yeah.
people that didn't know. It still wouldn't. You could start fair. It would still end up completely like.
Yeah, and fair doesn't necessarily, and I think this is also a little bit of the sort of left wing thinking that people seem to fall into, and I think it's a logical fallacy because it's kind of like, oh yeah, fair means everyone gets the same thing or
Yeah.
parts of the same thing, and that's fair. But what happened to people actually, like you said, expending their energy to acquire more of the said thing? Is that unfair? It's not. I mean, how could it be unfair?
That's kind of what I'm saying. It's fair. It's like, okay, it's not. It's not always. It's roughly connected. Your worth that you could, whatever your labor is, doing your labor at a number, and it's rough,
Mhm.
and that's roughly fair to the benefit you're providing. Of course, you
Yeah.
could say, well, that person that's good at football and kicks a ball around and makes £1 million a week. How is that fair
Yeah.
when somebody else is doing?
No, they well,
But it's roughly fair.
yeah.
As fair.
Yeah, well, I'd say it's fair because somebody's willing to pay the price for it. That's why it's fair because somebody thinks they're getting a good deal paying this guy £1 million a week.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
You know, because it takes two to tango in a transaction, right? I mean, there's two parties to it.
Yeah.
They're not paying him £1 million a week because they think that's what he's worth. They're paying him because they think he can generate
More than
1.1 million per week. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, anyway, right. Last question, $1 trillion or question at this stage. Who do you think Satoshi is or what?
Craig Stephen Wright.
Yeah, I think there's no doubts about that.
I really don't know. It's like I kind of don't want to know because I think it's perfect that we don't know.
Yeah. So, but you don't follow the Jamie Dimon school of thought where he's like, but he might appear 20 years down the line, and what happens then?
I've read the arguments. I know like Adam Back. It was close. The Hal Finney was close.
Yeah,
That guy that's in prison.
yeah.
Uh,
Ross, is it?
no,
No.
not him. No. This
Yeah,
guy.
I think I know who you're talking about.
He
Yeah,
was
I
like an
can't
armed
remember his name.
robber or something, but he also has the.
Yeah,
There's him. And there's other. There's. I don't know. It's funny to talk about, but I really don't even have an opinion on who it is, and I don't want it to be
yeah, and
revealed because or discovered.
yeah, yeah, and I don't, and more importantly, I think Bitcoin doesn't give a shit either way. It still works.
Somebody came out with. Have you seen the new Craig Wright thing this morning? He's suing. He's trying to sue some people in the UK for $1 trillion or £1 trillion, whatever, because he's worked out that that's the difference between the value of BSV and Bitcoin, and because Bitcoin Core has they have drained that trillion out of BSV, so he wants that. He's it's
Oh
just
man,
at this point it's a mental illness with this guy. Sorry, we ended on Craig.
yeah.
It's funny.
No, that's all right. Look, it is out there. Look, again, thanks a lot for a very, let's say, a wide spectrum of topics that we touched on. But I think hopefully our listeners have got an introduction to yourself. Where do they follow you? How often are you active on social media?
Yeah, Brum Bitcoin at Brum Bitcoin on Twitter. I
And that's your
shit post a lot.
yeah,
It's always sort of tangentially related to Bitcoin. I
yeah.
can't
No,
just
it is,
post.
and it yeah,
I just can't post stuff about Bitcoin all the time because it would get boring if it is what it is.
yeah.
But yeah, third Thursday of every month in Birmingham for our meetup. Everybody's welcome. It's a friendly group. It's really nice.
Awesome. Look, thanks a lot for taking the time out today. Thanks a lot for the conversation. Well, I'm sure we'll be in touch on Twitter anyway, and I'm sure we'll do this again in the future when Bitcoin has more shit to talk about. Which it's a never ending never ending rabbit hole, as I say.
I hope it's been worthwhile for you.
Yeah, no, it has absolutely, mate. Right, thanks a lot, Brom. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon.
All right, thank you.
See you, mate.